Yankees game to avoid some weather. They will be playing again on Thursday in the afternoon. At least we believe they will. Luke Jones joins us now to discuss a game that not many witnessed in person, that's for sure, at Comerica Park in Detroit. And I'm hoping that not a lot of Oriole fans got the memo about the early start, because it was an absolute, utter afternoon of frustration and disgust, I think, if you're an Orioles fan, with how it ended on Wednesday afternoon in Detroit.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, and really throughout the day, I mean, let's face it, through the first 7 innings of that ball game, it's what we've seen over and over and over. We saw it with Andrew Kashner on Tuesday night. We saw it with Dylan Bundy on Sunday. We've seen it with Dylan Bundy and Andrew Kashner in previous starts. This team just isn't scoring runs. Then they finally do, and they break through, and they score 3 runs in the 8th inning. They get a bunt. They get a sacrifice fly. Chris Davis nearly hits a home run. You're
Almost.
thinking, oh, okay, maybe this is kind of the start of at least stopping the bleeding, at least winning a few ball games here and preventing this thing from completely going off the rails. And then Darren O'Day, the guy who's been, other than Zach Britton, who's not available right now, obviously, the guy who's been the backbone of their bullpen for the better part of the last 6 years. He's been terrific for them. Gives up a 3-run homer to a guy that was hitting .083, a guy who didn't have an RBI yet on the season. I mean, this team's just broken right now. I don't know what else there is to say. They even get a pinch hit home run from Luis Sardinas, and then they give up the walk-off home run 2 pitches into the bottom of the 9th. I mean, I really don't know what to say at this point. We talk about it over and over whenever we get into the month of April. We always throw out the expression, you can't win the pennant in April, but you can certainly lose it. And with the Orioles now being at 5-13, just to get to 85 wins, which is on the bottom end of what could possibly be the second wild card, and usually it takes a few more wins than that. They need to play at a 90-win clip, that kind of a winning percentage the rest of the way, just to get back to 85 wins.
Well, you remember Houston built that hole 2 years ago, and they couldn't get out of it. They were a good team, right? So
right. I mean,
there's nothing that lets me believe this team's capable of playing 500 ball right now, right?
Yeah, right now. I mean, and look, this team's not going to lose 118 games or whatever their pace is at the moment off the top of my head. I'm not quite sure, but it's very – and we talked about this the other day. When you look at where they've played going back to the beginning of September, go back to even the middle of May after they started 22-10 last year, there hasn't been very many extended periods of prosperity. I mean, it's one thing to win 6 of 8 or something like that, but when was the last time this team played really good baseball for a solid month, a solid 6 weeks, where they play 10 over 500. I mean, they just haven't been in that territory for a really long time.
Well, they haven't had the pitching to be able to do that in a long time, right?
And now, I mean, the starting rotation looks better when you look at the top 2, and Gausman's been pretty solid. I thought he pitched pretty well on Wednesday. Really good breaking ball. His velocity was up.
Acceptable. I mean, as good as we've seen in a while, right?
Yeah. I mean, his velocity was good later in the game, which I really like seeing because that's kind of been my big red flag with him so far this season. But the offense has been completely unacceptable. It's been miserable. The 8th inning notwithstanding on Wednesday, but the bullpen. I mean, other than the New York series, which is kind of the story for the entire team, other than Dylan Bundy and Andrew Kashner pretty much, other than the New York series, the bullpen's been woeful. I know people were complaining about Pedro Araujo pitching in the bottom of the 9th inning, but Darren O'Day just gave up a 3-run homer. Brad Brock's been really shaky. Michael Givens has been bad. I mean, Araujo has actually been one of their better relievers the last couple of weeks. I mean, I don't know what people want Buck Showalter to do at this point. I mean, you listen to the fans, you want 7 different guys hitting 9th in the order or on the bench.
If you listen to the fans, you don't want half the guys on the team on the team. I mean, I think that's part of the problem. Part of the problem is, what is a Rule 5 player doing out there in that circumstance, even beyond Zach Britton's injury, even beyond O'Day screwing up in the 8th inning?
But no one's performing. I mean, Darren O'Day just gave up a 3-run homer when you had a 2-run lead. I mean,
they picked these players, dude.
I understand that, but Who did you want to pitch? The thing that I'll hear more than anything is, why not leave Richard Blyer in for another inning? He's been their best reliever by a pretty wide margin. I mean, I hear you, but I can't nitpick Buck Showalter when this team is playing garbage baseball in every phase of the game. I mean, if you just want to blame the manager because that's what we do, we blame John Harbaugh when...
I'm blaming the construction. No.
No, I hear you, but I'm just talking in general. I mean,
okay.
At some point in time, even the construction, I mean, you're talking about established major leaguers here that have been absolutely terrible. It's one thing to talk about Rule 5 guys, or it's one thing to talk about bringing back Kobe Rasmus before he got hurt, or trying to have Danny Valencia in a utility infielder role, or Luis Sardinas or Vielma or guys like that. But what about the guys that are established major leaguers on this team that have been absolutely terrible? I mean,
well, I can roll call it out. I mean, I got the averages right in front of me. I mean, it's disgusting. I mean, Chris Davis hitting $1.25. I mean, you're almost giving him a standing O when he does one thing right in the eighth inning of a ball game that it already it felt like they had won, quite frankly. Come in, get 3 outs, you win the baseball game. And they're incapable of doing that right now.
Well, they needed to get 6 outs.
6 outs, right.
I mean, that's just where they are. I mean, but that's the thing. I mean, Adam Jones has an OPS right around 600 right now. I can't blame Dan Duquette or Brady Anderson or Buck Showalter or John Angelos for that. Chris Davis has a .203 slugging percentage, even with that hit on Wednesday. As much as I had concerns about that contract, and as much as I expected the end of that contract to be that bad, I don't think anyone expected Chris Davis to be this terrible in the third year of it, meaning playing at a level where he doesn't belong in the major leagues if this continues. I mean, Tim Beckham, we've talked about him. He's been hit well below 200 for going back to the beginning of last September. I mean, I can blame the front office for a lot of things, but these are a lot of established guys that have been absolutely terrible. So it really is an all-around blame game. Blame ownership, blame the front office, blame the players, blame the coaches. I mean, I'm not saying anyone's absolved whatsoever. I'm just, at some point you kind of look at this thing and look, I thought they were going to win 82 games. I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs. I thought they should have rebuilt. I would have traded Manny Machado last offseason, let alone not done it this past one. But, at some point in time, you still look at this whole thing and say, you're 5-13. And you've just passed tax day. I mean, really? That's the best you can do? I mean, it really is, nothing short of disastrous, as disastrous as it can be, other than being 0-18, if you want to conjure 1988. But
well, if you want to feel good about yourself, there's plenty of other teams playing bad baseball right now, but you just don't want to be one of them. But, I mean, there's a lot of that. I mean, Kansas City, they're feeling bad about themselves. Detroit was feeling bad till we showed up, right?
Yeah, well, and that's what's also discouraging about this. I mean, this is a Tigers team that had been really struggling, and you're thinking, okay, you don't have to sweep but win 2 out of 3. You're feeling a little bit better about yourself. You're going to come home and start a long homestand, and that's when you start inching back to 500. I mean, there is a ton of baseball left, but you just start doing the math and you say, is this a team that's going to be capable of winning at, averaging, playing at a winning percentage that would equal out a 90-win season? I don't see that. I think that's a long shot. I mean, they're already putting themselves in a position where they're going to need an unprecedented kind of run to get themselves back in good position. I mean, that's, they're burying themselves, and I'm not declaring it over just yet, but...
Well, Boston running away doesn't do them any favors either, right?
Sure. Well, and again, I never expected them to compete for the division, but even just look at the wild card right now. They're really in a hole there. I mean, they're in that 5.5, 6.5 games out kind of territory already, with 8 teams ahead of them. I mean, it's getting late really early here for them, and again, mathematically, yeah, there's plenty of games left. My goodness, there's 5 months of the season left, but you enter the month of May and you're 13 games under 500 potentially, which, at this point, that's completely within the realm of possibility, if not worse, if they don't turn it around. You just do the math. It's not going to add up unless this team just starts playing at a ridiculous level. And I think even the most optimistic people acknowledge that this was a team that had to at least get off to a treading water kind of a start, understanding how difficult the schedule was, and that's been part of this, no question. But I think this was going to be a team that if they were going to be in that playoff conversation, they needed to be more consistent and avoid this type of a valley that they're in right now. I mean, this is a crater they've fallen in to start the season. I mean, you're 8 games under 500 already. I mean, that's not insurmountable, but it's really tough. I mean, it's really, they're already approaching that circling the drain territory if you're being realistic about it.
All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Howard Bank, a relentless commitment to being the best at everything they do, branches throughout Baltimore and Maryland. The Orioles will get back after it on Thursday in Detroit. Luke and I will be monitoring that. It is a 1 o'clock start. Alex Cobb will be heading to the Hill, and I guess we continue to wonder what's under the hood there. And they move the game around, and I'm not one to continue to talk about the crowds, but I'm going to continue to talk about the crowds because there's something that's jarring to your eye when you put a baseball game on and there are 500 people there. So, they move the game around. Thursday it'll probably be a little bit better than that. Just the whole beginning of this, there's been nothing about any of this that's been settling for the franchise itself. Home or away, the games, the weather, the pitching, the bullpen. I don't know where to be complimentary on any of this. I did compliment them for giving Alex Cobb $53 million, and I do hope on Thursday he appoints himself better than he did last Saturday when I was sitting at Pizza John's disgusted.
Well, I mean, with Alex Cobb, I'm not going to overreact to one star just like you're not going to, and even if he's not very good to close out this series, I'm still not going to overreact. I mean, this, and you can blame him, you can blame the Orioles, you can blame the rest of the market. I don't know. I mean,
well, they gave him $53 million, and he's finally showing up to pitch now. And to your point, they're already buried underneath. That's how much better he has to be, or what the purpose of having him here for if they're really not going to try to win, right?
Well, this is a 4-year contract. Let's not just look in the scope of 2018. I mean, he's going to be here for 4 years, and who knows where they are 2 years from now? Who knows where they are 3 years from now? I mean, a lot can happen, good or bad, in that regard. But in the case of Cobb, I mean, there's a reason why spring training is 6 weeks. As much as we all kind of poke fun at the fact that they play 30 games in the Grapefruit League or whatever it ends up being, and spring training's so long, and you watch a few spring games, and then you're ready for the start of the season. There's a reason why pitchers amp up the way they do. I mean, go take a look at what Dylan Bundy did this spring in relation to what he's doing now, and tell me that there isn't, some purpose to getting ready, but also realizing that you don't want the results to matter early on because it can be pretty darn ugly. So I don't know. I don't know what the realistic expectation is for Cobb right now. You certainly want to see him better. I think as much as the results were terrible, he just didn't look good. I mean, he's never been a big velocity guy. His fastball velocity was fine, but no movement. His secondary stuff was very flat. I mean, he looked like a guy who hasn't been on the mound very much. So you want to see better, but again, when you're talking about a team that's already 8 games under 500 and you haven't even played 20 games yet, I mean, you're really in that territory now where you need to start stacking some wins. You need to get wins however you can get them, and get this, get yourselves feeling a little bit better about yourselves. I mean, at this point, and I know Adam Jones said after Tuesday night's game that you don't start really getting concerned until June. From a holistic standpoint, they're concerned right now. I don't think Adam Jones is being flippant. I think he's trying to, understand that there's a big picture there, and he's not trying to express panic. But at some point in time, you just got to start playing better. And I mean, what they've done across the board. It's one thing to lose a bunch of one-run games. Yeah, I mean, they lost 6-5 on Wednesday. If they had a few more losses like that, I might be a little more inclined to say, okay, this isn't completely insurmountable, but the offense has been so bad. The bullpen, for the most part, has been bad. The starting rotation, half of it has been bad, and you still have no idea who's going to handle that 5th spot. I mean, there are just too many things to look at with this team right now and feel optimistic, other than just to say it's early and there's a lot of baseball left. So, I mean, I'm
up on Luis Sardinas. He's going to save us.
Yeah. I mean, that was pretty big. I mean, my goodness. I mean, talk about an unlikely hero A guy who had 4 career home runs and a .568 career OPS going into Wednesday's game.
Dude, who was the catcher? Taylor Teagarden. He was my favorite.
Yeah.
One-day wonder as well. He had a couple
You go
of days.
into Dave Crishone and John Stafaro and all kinds of different guys you can think of, but
I have a feeling Luis Sardinas is not going to be a major contributor for the Orioles. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe 3 years from now he's Melvin Mora, but I doubt that. So
probably another Henry Urrutia, if you remember his walk.
Of course, but I mean, this wasn't a walk-off. This was the walk-off.
But I just mean ninth-inning heroics. I mean, you understand.
This one will be forgotten. No one saw Luis Sardinas go yard with a potential game winner at that point.
Well, the good news is no one saw Darren O'Day give up the 3-run homer or Araujo give up the game-winning homer either.
Phil Wood once said that about my radio show. If a tree falls in the woods, well, there you go. All of our WNST programming brought to you by Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast, the tasty coffee, the best fried chicken in the land, and, of course, those Western fries. If you're doing it right, you're downloading the app. You're using that when you pump gas. You're counting up the points, and then you get the free Western fries. The only thing better than Western fries is when they're free. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast, and getting that Kona blend going in the morning as well. Also, the Maryland Jockey Club, the Maryland Jockey Club Laurel entries now in our morning newspaper as well as each and every day on the front of our website. Of course, this week, the Tessio running on Saturday down there. That is a Preakness prep. And they'll run the real Preakness in about 5 weeks down at Hi-Ho Pimlico. I'm taking my wife to Laurel for the Kentucky Derby in a couple weeks, so I'm excited about that as well. Luke, I just want to get off baseball. Are you done with the Orioles? Because I'm just going to throw one little thing at you. Is there anything else you want to throw any more darts at them before 1 o'clock on Thursday?
Yeah, I think
done?
I think that's about enough for the one conversation.
Well, the day started crappy enough. I mean, Bruno Sammartino died Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
And, I could sit here and wax on and off, and I think I have over the last couple of weeks. I had an incredible conversation with Alex Marvez earlier in the week. You can find that in the buyatoyota.com audio vault. I know you and I talked Andre last week and Gary Michael Capetta. I'm so jaded, right, by my Andre Bruno thing that I almost want to stop the radio station on Wednesday morning, literally, and just go all Bruno all the time because that's how I feel about him. And, I tried to do an Italian dinner. I remember telling Dennis about that last week because Dennis and I had a long wrestling conversation. But to have the Andre the Giant thing happen last week, and it almost feels like he died last week, right? Because, you haven't seen him in 25 years, but he died a long, long time ago. But it is incredible. I have Bruno's home number. Bruno's in my phone. I've called Bruno's. His phone rings. He answers the phone, and it's Bruno. And, I've talked to him on occasions, and I literally reached for the phone last week on the Andre thing, and I thought, I'll get Bruno on later, and talk to him. And I never reached him, and I found out, through all the stories on Wednesday that he had been ill for a couple of months. But to me, he's still alive and real, and I know there's no huge outpouring on Facebook or Twitter, maybe the way there was for Andre last week. And maybe I'm finding out that not as many people knew who Bruno Sammartino is as I did or took to him the way I did. He was truly a Brooks Robinson kind of figure for the length of my life, right? So when I really kind of took it hard Wednesday morning when Bruno died, and I'm kind of shocked that it wasn't more reverberated in a town that he did better in. But I sort of learned my lesson when I tried to have an Italian dinner and I couldn't find 200 people to come out and love Bruno up for some meatballs down in Little Italy, and that was 10 years ago, 2010. I googled 8 years ago. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. That's my take on Bruno was there was no one better than Bruno, and Bruno helped build wrestling.
Oh, there's no question about it. And, full disclosure, Bruno was way before my time.
Right.
I remember seeing him with David, maybe tag teaming a couple of times.
Bruno is to you what Art Donovan is to me. I never saw him play, right?
Well, I'd even go a step further than the great Art Donovan. I would say Bruno kind of was Babe Ruth of pro wrestling for someone that grew up in the mid-'80s. And, you saw Hogan in his prime, and you knew about Ric Flair, and certainly, I think now, all these years later, there are wrestlers that held in higher esteem just because they, starting in the mid-'80s with WWF becoming national, Hulk Hogan just had a bigger platform. Stone Cold Steve Austin had a bigger platform. John Cena today, a bigger platform. But Bruno was just a legend. I mean, my goodness, his 2 WWF reigns spanned, 11 years total? I mean, just completely crazy when you think about that.
Sold out Madison Square Garden 190 times.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
Wow.
I think anyone who loves
that beats Billy Joel.
Right. I think anyone who loves professional wrestling in whichever era, whether you're talking here in 2018, whether you're talking about the Attitude Era, the Rock and Wrestling Era, the mid '80s, I think there's such a reverence, such a respect, such an adoration for Bruno Sammartino being one of the pioneers and having that star power to sell out Madison Square Garden. And I think his success gave Vince Sr. the vision, and certainly Vince Jr. the vision that pro wrestling transformed into sports entertainment and evolving over the last 4 decades the way that it has. Bruno was one of those original stars that I think kind of provided that vision that this thing could be so much larger, so much more lucrative than it was in the territorial era, where there was certainly success, but it was just a way different business, different industry. And the one thing I will say, I know Bruno had pretty wasn't a secret that a feud, falling out with WWE, that for
lasted
the longest
years.
time he wasn't part of their Hall of Fame. Was excellent to see him inducted into the Hall of Fame a few years ago, that he got to be celebrated in that forum, that he, wasn't something that was posthumous. So I think anyone who gets it, anyone who loves the business, anyone who loves sports entertainment, pro wrestling, whatever you want to call it, certainly Wednesday, a sad day for the great Bruno Sammartino passing of this world.
And beloved in Pittsburgh, bro.
No question.
Stopped everything. I mean, every Pittsburgh writer that you and I drink with, stopped everything to compliment him. And more than that, the kind of person, the kind of citizen he was in Pittsburgh over the last 60 years. I didn't see him run around in Pirate stuff or Steeler stuff. He was a very low-key man in that way, and very, very old school as his character, right? Like, I don't even know that he had a character. I mean, I think that pretty much was him, kind of, sort of. But beloved in Pittsburgh. I mean, everything. I mean, it was a major Art Donovan, John Unitas kind of loss in Pittsburgh on Wednesday.
No question about it. I think that's a good comparison. And, Pittsburgh and certainly if you follow WWE on Twitter and their various superstars, even many of the modern-day superstars, you could tell that when Bruno would come around for the Hall of Fame every year or WrestleMania, those rare occasions that he made time for many of today's wrestlers, and you could tell quite a few of them commented on that, and they were very much touched and impacted by his passing.
They called him the Pittsburgh Hercules, by the way. All right, Luke Jones can be found, Luke at WNST.net, as well as Baltimore Luke on Twitter. If the Orioles get their ass kicked on Thursday, he'll be there to chronicle it. And I don't think we're here to make you feel better or worse or one way or another. We're here to tell it like it is. Maybe I should be using the Howard Cosell voice on WNST as part of our liners. All of our WNST programming brought to you by our friends at Fremont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need the right lender. You need Carl Delmont. Carl and I grabbing lunch over at Michael's in Timonium, and I'm going to try to watch some Oriole baseball out this week as well. Fremont is there whether you're buying, selling, just in the market to think about things. You're wondering if you refinance, whether you're going to save money. You're always going to get the straight, honest goods from Fremont Mortgage. Go to Fremont.com and learn more about what they do. King Discount Liquor's also there sponsoring us. Lottery, beer, booze, and the best prices in Baltimore. I've got some Malbec and some stout to work through here through the week. Get on over to Pulaski Highway, and they're shooting a new TV commercial. They're threatening to put me in it this summer, which I'm sure I'll do something foolish for Paul King, because that's what I do around here. Nasty at WNST.net, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. If there's any breaking news, you get that first on the WNST Tech Service, including the NFL schedule getting released at 8 p.m. on Thursday night, so we'll all be gathered around for that. We're running, yes, we are doing road trips, by the way. Charlotte, Atlanta, Kansas City, L.A., Nashville. We'll have all that going. You could always throw me an email and find it under the Road Trips tab, right where the Ray Lewis Canton bus trip is headed to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in August. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports